Norman Ebbutt, 1894–1968, was a British journalist. In 1925 he was sent to Berlin, where he became chief correspondent for the Times of London. He warned of Nazi warmongering, but the Times censored his reports to promote appeasement. He was expelled by the Nazis in August 1937, following accusations of espionage. Early life. In 1910, at the age of 16, Norman Ebbutt spent 6 months teaching English to adults at the School of Languages in Duisburg, Germany. The following year he had his first job in journalism, becoming second correspondent in Paris for the Morning Leader, later Daily News and Leader, before returning to England in 1913. He spent some time in Finland and Russia. Times reporter. He got a job with the Times in August 1914 but left a few months later to join the RNVS as temporary lieutenant for the duration of the First World War, returning to the Times in 1919 to work in the foreign sub-editors department. In 1925, he was sent to Berlin, where he became chief correspondent. During his time in Berlin, Norman Ebbutt became well acquainted with top government officials and Counter-Chancellor Heinrich Brüning among his friends. He was distrustful of Hitler and disliked the Nazis. In April 1933 he wrote in the Times, "Herr Hitler, in his speeches as Chancellor, has professed a peaceful foreign policy. But this does not prove that the underlying spirit of the new Germany is a peaceful one. Germany is inspired by the determination to recover all it has lost and has little hope of doing so by peaceful means. Influential Germans do not see 10 years elapsing before the war they regard as natural or inevitable breaks out in Europe. One may hear 5 or 6 years mentioned." Later journalist and author Douglas Reed described the article as a masterpiece of careful political forecasting, based on expert knowledge. However, Ebbutt felt his message about the real mood of Germany was not being fully conveyed to the British public, because of the Times and its editor Geoffrey Dawson. The Times editor Geoffrey Dawson was closely allied with Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, and pushed hard for the Munich Agreement in 1938. Candid news reports by Ebbutt from Berlin that warned of warmongering were rewritten in London to support the appeasement policy. American William Scherer, a fellow correspondent in Berlin, summed up, "The trouble for Ebbutt was that his newspaper, the most esteemed in England, would not publish much of what he reported. The Times in those days was doing its best to appease Hitler and to induce the British government to do likewise." The unpleasant truths that Ebbutt telephoned nightly to London from Berlin were often kept out of the great newspaper. Ebbutt was eventually expelled under a supposed charge of espionage in retaliation to the expulsion of 3 German nationals from England. Ebbutt always denied the charge. Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister, sent a warning to all other foreign journalists not to attend his departure at Berlin station, saying that their presence there would be an unfriendly act. Around 50 people turned up to say goodbye to him this year. After only a month back in England, Norman Ebbutt suffered a severe stroke, thus effectively ending his career as a journalist. He was 43 years old. Further reading: Frank McDonough, The Times, Norman Ebbutt and the Nazis, 1927–37, Journal of Contemporary History 27 No. 3, 1992, 407–424. Online.